What is up guys, Alex here, otherwise known as Clash with Style, and we are looking at part 2 of this tutorial where we're going to be looking at some blending and some sort of glows, lighting effects and whatnot. So let's just jump right into it and get started. So first things first, this is what we built up in the previous tutorial. If you haven't checked that out already, please go and do so. Very important that you go and do that, otherwise you'll not be too sure how to set up this tag right here. So the first thing we are going to be doing in this one is blending in this piece a bit together, and for me this background needs to be blurred. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure we're on the background right here. We're going to come up to filter, go down, click on blur, Gaussian blur. Okay, we are then going to drop it to somewhere around about 3.5, I reckon will do perfectly. And yeah, I feel like that works really nicely. It gives a nice little blur in the background and brings us more into the focus right here. What I'm also going to do is highlight a few of the areas that for me stand out a bit too much. So if I just grab my brush, this bit down here definitely stands out too much for me. This bit up here stands out too much for me. And these edges right here stand out far too much for me. So we're going to be looking to blend them in a little bit more. So we're going to start with this one down here. Okay, so let's just see what we can do about that. What we're going to do is we're going to locate wherever that part is. So it's right here, this part right in here. We're going to click on that, make sure we're selected on the layer mask, not on this, we want on the layer mask. We're going to come up and we're going to find a soft brush this time. Make sure we're on black. We're going to up the brush size a little bit, something like that. And we're just going to brush gently around the edges like this. And this is going to blend it in much nicer. So you can see that's what we had and this is now what we have. Obviously you don't want it to blend in too much, and for me I've maybe gone a little bit too overboard with this. So I'm going to swap colors to white. I'm going to reduce the brush size a little bit and we're just going to bring back some of those. You can just keep doing this back and forth until you're happy with what you end up with. For me that's maybe a little bit too much. I'm going to get a really big brush size and just subtly brush away like that. And that is looking much better. Next up we're going to work on this one up the top right here. So we're going to go over everything bar the render, so make sure we're under the render layer. We're going to click here, we're going to come and select the color directly behind it in the background. So make sure we're on the brush, we're going to hold Alt on our keyboard and you'll see it is going to bring up this little eyedropper tool like so. We're then going to click on the background and we now have that selected. Make sure you have a new layer by clicking this one. So I'm going to be doing this in layer 5 right here, and what we're going to do is we are just going to be clicking over the top of this. Just do it as much or as little as you want. I'm just going to do about that much. We are then going to locate this render. A quick way you can do it is make sure you click V on the keyboard or go up here, hold Control, then you can click on that layer and you can see that has automatically located that for me. What we're going to do now is use this as a clipping mask. So we're going to grab this, it was this one, wasn't it? Yes. We're going to grab this, drag it to just above that layer. Okay, so it's just above this one. We're going to right click on layer 5 and click create clipping mask. Now what that does is it means it's only going to go onto that layer. It's not going to affect the background at all now. So this means we can now start playing around with the different blending tools, but actually I'm going to keep this on normal and I'm just going to drop the fill to somewhere around about probably about 35. And that is just going to help to blend it in slightly more. We are also then going to do the same with this part in over on this, oh that's flow, over on this side. Okay, so we're just going to go up here. We're going to click B, then Alt on our keyboard. We're going to click find a color. Then we're just going to brush around this area, find wherever these parts may be on the piece. So it looks like we're already there. So we've got two versions of this. So I'm going to drag the first in there, create clipping mask. That's going to go on there for us. We're going to reduce that down to probably about 60%. We're then going to duplicate it again, Control J on the keyboard, and we're going to drag this down to the other one. Again, right click and clipping mask to apply it onto this one right there, and 60% will also work for that. So we've already started to blend this together ever so slightly. What I'm going to do now is just overall blend the piece a lot more. So we're going to go in behind the render. So this is the render here. I'll put it in red so you guys can see easier. And we'll also call it render. What I did there was just double click and then type in what you want and hit enter. Okay, so we're going to be doing this all below the render right here. And I'm going to name this layer blending 1. Okay. And what I'm going to be using here is actually my tablet. If you have a tablet, it's going to be much easier for you guys to use because you can use this right here called transfer, which is going to mean it's just going to react to your brush however hard or light you push it. So I'll just use a red brush as an example here. You can see hardly at all, then it's going to get really heavy. Okay, so it's going to be much easier for me to blend because I have this. But if you don't have a graphics tablet, very easy for you guys to do it too. All you need to do is play around with opacity and fill, because if you have it fully, if you click obviously, then you can drop the opacity and you can see you can get the same effect just with a little bit more effort. Okay, so I'm just going to get started here and we're doing exactly the same. Make sure you're on B. We're going to click Alt on the keyboard, then we're going to click, find that color, and then we're just going to brush and around some of these edges. I'm actually going to make my brush size a little bit bigger by using the bracket keys, and we're just going to do this over the whole piece. In fact, do you know what? I'm going to put this over the top of the renders, hopefully able to blend in some of the render as well. I'm going to actually grab color off there, just brighten this up a little bit. I'm going to grab the green off there, just some gentle brushing. We definitely want this to all blend in a little bit more, so I'm just going to keep playing around with some of the colors here, just try and blend in a little bit more if we can, because everything is just standing out a little bit too much for me. We just want everything to flow together very nicely. We're going to add in a little bit more lightness up here. We're going to want some more orange in through there, something like that. Okay, and there we have it. So we have blended this piece a lot more. You guys, like I said, can get this effect by playing around with the opacity, but obviously because I've got my brush, it's much easier for me. I'm actually going to put in a touch more green in here and then a touch more of this pink color in there. That's looking really good. I'm actually going to add in some of this green here a little bit as well. And yeah, really happy with how this is starting to come together. Definitely already looking really good. Okay, so everything is blended a lot more. I feel like there's a sort of better dynamic going on in this piece. And you guys, you'll see me going back and forth, just playing around with a few bits and bobs here and there. Just trying to blend, like I said, this piece together, because I feel like one of the things that people lack is blending. And it's really super easy to do. Like I said, we're just going to keep going back and forth, just blending it in. We want a little bit of green around this edge, but not too much. So I'm just going to grab the background color, go over a little bit more. And yeah, look at the difference that that makes right there. So it's really flowing together there, and like that, it stands out a little bit too much. So I really like what we've done there with this. So we're just going to keep going with some of the lighting effects going on here. So what we're going to do is, I'm just going to keep going a little bit with this blending. It's not quite there for me yet. Just going to add in a little bit here and dull this down a little bit in there. Something like that. We definitely want some of this orange down in this area. Yeah, that's better. Okay, let's go from here. So we're going to create another layer over everything, and we're going to double click and then name this lighting. So what I'm going to do now is simply going to come down and grab a black brush. Again, if you've not got a tablet, just use your brush and then lower the opacity to as and where you feel is fit. But what I'm going to be doing here is just using my tablet because I have it, much easier for me. and we're going to be looking at where we should have the shading. So personally, I feel like the lighting is actually coming from underneath. So if I just grab this white, it looks to me like the light is catching his eyelids right here. You can see, so it looks like it's coming from underneath this sort of direction. So that is how we're going to play this lighting out. Okay, so what we're going to do is, like I said, we're just going to start with a black brush. And what we're going to do is just shade around some of this top area just to darken it down ever so slightly. We can go back after and reduce the opacity if we feel there's too much. But I feel like that is starting to come together. I'm going to reduce it a little bit, probably to about 70%. Should look good. We're then going to come in here. In fact, we're going to call this one shading because it's shading, and this next one lighting. Lighting. And we're going to get a white brush and just do a little bit of lighting coming in from this bottom area, and we definitely don't want that to be too much, so we're going to put this on color dodge and then bring it down to somewhere around about 35%. We're then going to do a little bit more lighting. This time we are going to be using a green. We're just going to grab a green off of the render, and we're just going to brush in quite a decent amount in here, something like that. Okay, like this, and then we are going to go over here onto vivid light, linear light, hard light. Any of these ones will do. I'm going to go for vivid light on this one, and you can drop it down to whatever you wish. I'm going to go for probably around about 55%. I think will work on this. Yep, that's looking really good, and already this piece is coming together. So look at the difference we've got from there to there. So just with simple blending, I'm actually going to drop this down to 60%. I feel like it's maybe a little bit too much, and it's really starting to come together. It's looking really, really good. Happy with how it's looking for sure. So we're just going to keep going. For me, maybe we're lacking a little bit on the blending over on this knife right here, so I'm just going to reduce the brush size using the bracket keys on the keyboard and just brush a little bit over there, a little bit in here like this, and that should look a little bit nicer. We're also going to have a little bit of blue there, have a little bit of blue up here, and we're going to add in some blue over on here. I just feel like it's maybe missing a few blue areas. Definitely looking nicer right there, and the shading and lighting making a huge difference. Okay, so now that we have this, we're going to continue on with the piece, and we're going to start doing some serious glowing effects. Okay, so there's a few bits that I'm going to highlight now. So again, I'm just going to go in, grab my red brush. We're just going to put it on this, make sure that's all set. Okay, perfect. And we're going to highlight the bits that we want to highlight. So I'm just going to circle these in red as always. So we're going to want to highlight anything that's popping out. So for me, it's going to be this we're going to want here, probably going to want something on there, here as well. We're definitely going to want something over this area, on here as well, on here, this little bit here, and we're going to want the edge of this to be lightened. Then we're going to come in, we want the eyes to be lightened, the nozzle of this to be lightened, and some orange glows in here. So those are all the bits that I'm going to be looking at glowing up. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to keep an eye on that as we go in here. And for this one, I'm not going to be using my brush, I'm just going to be clicking. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with one color, so we might as well start with blue. We're going to come in here, make sure you're on brush, click Alt on the keyboard to select color, and what we're going to do, whatever color that selects, we're going to drag it up to the top right hand side so it's as vibrant as we can possibly get it. We're then going to choose some different brush sizes to use here. So we're going to go for something about this size in there. That is a hard brush, make sure you're on a soft brush. Okay, and we're going to click, and we're going to do one up here, we're going to click, we're going to want one in here, we're going to click, we're going to want one there, we're going to click, and we want a reasonably big one in there, click, probably one up here, click. Okay, and maybe a small one down there. So that is going to be it for our blue glows. Any of these ones right here will work. I usually go for linear dodge or color dodge. color dodge in this circumstance probably will work. We're going to go for about 35% and we're going to call this blues. We're then going to go into the next one and we will go for oranges, I suppose. So we're going to come in here, grab this color, again, whack it up to full. We maybe want this to be slightly more orange, so we're going to drag it down a little bit. And we're going to start glowing in some of our oranges. We definitely want that to be orange, sorry. On the eyelids to be orange, and it looks like that's pretty much the only orange bits, maybe one down here. And we're going to put that on to linear dodge add. And we're going to go for around about 15% could work. You could also use vivid light like we used in the previous one. You could use hard light. I feel like vivid light might actually work quite nicely here. Nah, we're definitely going to want linear dodge on about 15%, I think. Okay, we're going to call these oranges. We are now going to do our greens. Okay, so again, using on the brush, we're going to click and we're going to drag it up to the top. We are then going to do, there's going to be a lot of green glows right here. So we're definitely going to have plenty to do. So we're going to start with one up here, change the brush size as and when you feel necessary. We're going to want one there. We're going to want some nice small ones on there. We're definitely going to want a reasonably big glow coming off that. We're going to want a glow on the grenade. We're going to want a glow on the gas mask. We're going to want a glow over on this part over here, reasonably big. We're going to want a glow here and here. We're definitely going to want a big glow coming off there as well. And that looks about all the green bits that we will be covering. Again, play around with whatever ones you feel will work. That actually looks quite cool on overlay, but I think we're going to go for linear dodge. We're going to go for something like 15 as well, I think. Should work. And we're going to call this greens, so you can see that's what we had. We've now used those little glows and this is now what we have. So it's definitely making this piece pop much more, definitely starting to come together. And that is going to be it for this segment of the tutorial. In fact, there's one last little bit that we're going to do. We're going to call this reds, and the one part that I wanted to do is, of course, zoomed in a bit much there, is the eyes. So we're just going to get a nice red brush. We're going to zoom in reasonably close to those pupils and we're just going to click a couple of times. Overlay or soft light will do for this. We're going to put this one onto overlay and we're going to go for something about 25%, and that is just going to pop those eyes a little bit more. Looks really good. Happy with how that's looking. And like I said, that is going to be it for this section. So if we remove all this, this is what we started off from the previous tutorial, and this is what we have right now. So definitely starting to come together, and if you guys are following along, you should have something reasonably similar. Obviously don't use the same render. League of Legends render though are perfect. So if we just type in League of Legends render, I've already got it there. Click on images, then you'll see there is loads and loads of really good ones that you can use, and these are perfect. This is what the type of renders that I used when I started making tag making, and it's definitely very easy to use them. So hopefully you guys are continuing to learn something. If you've got any questions at all, feel free to ask me. And yeah, keep an eye out for the next video, and I will see you guys then. Peace.